Welcome, everyone, to Lakers Roundtable. I'm Mark Medina with the LA Times Lakers blog. And it was only 2 years ago when the Lakers beat a young and up-and-coming Oklahoma City Thunder in the first round. And at the time, Kobe Bryant predicted that he would see the Thunder later down the line in future postseasons. And now that moment has come where the Lakers will face Oklahoma City, this time in the Western Conference semifinals. To delve into that series, we bring in the esteemed Darnell Mayberry, the Thunder's beat writer for the Oklahoman. What's going on, man?
Esteemed?
Yeah, man. Yeah, you've been killing it on the blog, on the website, on Twitter, everything.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I didn't get that memo.
Well, first things first, you just got out of a shoot-around not too long ago. I know you were tweeting that Thunder center Kendrick Perkins went through most of the shoot-around and is a game-time decision against the Lakers. What provide with that?
I think Kendrick Perkins will play tonight. I think there's no way he's going to miss this series. He admittedly hates Pau Gasol and everything about the Los Angeles Lakers, so if there's any way he can play, he's going to play. And he's practiced the last couple of days, so I think he's going to be ready to go.
So you're mentioning he hates Pau Gasol and everyone else on the Lakers. How much have you seen that mindset trickle down with the rest of his teammates?
Well, James Harden was interested yesterday. He just called it a rivalry, and it stems from that 2010 meeting that you mentioned. The fact that the Lakers really beat them. It was a competitive series, but they beat them in 6. Pau Gasol tip in the last seconds here in Oklahoma City is really what sealed that game for the Lakers and helped them to move on and eventually become the champions, back-to-back champs. So the fact that the Thunder has recent history with these guys, I think, not so much, I wouldn't call it hate, but they do want to become the best. And you know what they say about, if you want to be the best, you have to beat the best. And they do look at the Lakers as a model franchise in terms of the championships that they've won and how they handled their business in the playoffs. So I think the Thunder are definitely striving to get to that point sooner rather than later.
So, Darnell, you've put together a pretty comprehensive breakdown of all the positional matchups for the series. You argued, Perkins' health could be the one factor that could determine the outcome of this series. How do you see this variable playing out?
If he's not healthy, then I think there's going to be a problem. I think that there's no way that the Thunder can match up with the Lakers if Kendrick Perkins is 5% back. He's going to be as close to 100% as possible because when he is healthy, he's one of the best low-post defenders in the league. Kobe Bryant has, in fact, called him the best low-post man defender in the league. So Andrew Bynum will have his hands full with a healthy Perkins, and if not, the Thunder is going to have trouble rebounding and closing out possessions, and that can lead to a long series for the Thunder.
Now, another obvious thing to watch is Metta World Peace or Ron Artest or whatever name you want to attach to him. He returned in Game 7 to the Lakers Nuggets series after serving that 7-game suspension for throwing that elbow against James Harden. Ever since that incident went down, what's been the Thunder's reaction regarding that incident and the ensuing suspension?
I think everybody just came out and said it's a bad play and tried to move on from it. They know that it wasn't the type of play that belongs in the game of basketball, and they're not going to try to give the Lakers any kind of bulletin board material or keep it going any longer than it has to. So I think they're really just trying to move on and focus on the game right now and winning 4 games in this series to move on to the Western Conference Finals for the second straight year.
So you mentioned they don't want to provide any bulletin board material, but did James Harden have anything particular to say to these 2 arguments that Ron is trying to make? He says he's not going to keep the peace, so to speak, and apologize to him because he wants to keep a competitive edge, and then he's suggested on a number of times that Harden's known for being a flopper, and in some ways he purposely tried to get in his way. Has there been any reaction with that?
No, James has said in front of reporters at the end of practice and even on local radio out here that he doesn't understand how it could possibly be considered his fault in any way. And that's really the truth. I mean, Ron Artest went high with an elbow and hit him in the head, even though replays show that James Harden was sort of going into Ron Artest and just sort of almost initiated some contact by drifting over into Metal World Peace, but there's no excuse for the fact of that elbow going that high and being delivered that hard. That's not how you get someone off. So James Harden is basically saying that there's no way that you can consider him at fault in any way, shape, or form.
I know that Ron Artest, Metal World Peace, doesn't normally guard James Harden, but just in terms of this incident, how much do you see this storyline coming into play in the series, just in terms of any brewing animosity between the two teams as well as that home crowd?
I mean, it's definitely going to be a big thing to watch. The home crowd here is going to be loud and boisterous tonight. They're going to boo the brakes off of Ron Artest when he's introduced in the starting lineup. Every time he catches the ball, they're going to boo him. When he shoots and misses, they're going to cheer wildly. It's going to be some of the biggest, loudest cheers of the night whenever he misses a shot. So this is a loud arena as it is. So I don't see how Ron Artest is going to be able to come in here and not feel sort of the wrath of this crowd. But the storyline is there. ESPN's been here the last few days asking about it, and they're not even broadcasting games 1 or 2, so it kind of shows you how big of a deal that is. And I think a lot of eyes are going to be on those two tonight and throughout the rest of this series.
We're speaking with Darnell Mayberry, the Thunder's beat writer for the Oklahoman. You can follow him on Twitter under his name. And speaking of Artest, he wrote not too long ago about how his strong defense on Kevin Durant in the 2010 NBA playoffs really helped shape Durant's development. In what respects?
Well, the fact that his physicality against Kevin Durant was just an eye-opener for Kevin. I mean, that was his 3rd year in the league and his first time in the postseason. He hadn't really faced anything like that at any point in his career on any level. So the fact that Ron Artest was able to introduce him to that, I think just worked wonders for his development, because since then he got a chance to go against a lot of stout defenders: Shane Battier, Tony Allen, Jason Kidd, Sean Marion, Wilson Chandler, Aaron Aflalo. I mean, it's a who's list of bulldog defenders in this league that Kevin Durant has been benefited from cutting his teeth on. So the fact that he got a chance to experience so early in his career some strong defense against Ron Artest, that's only helped him and speeded his development in terms of becoming a better offensive player. I think this time around we're going to see a much different Kevin Durant. Not only has he learned how to score more efficiently, but he's also become a better playmaker, and he understands now that he doesn't have to take all the shots and make every shot. He can get teammates involved. If you want to play him tight, he can make the simple pass to Serge Ibaka for a mid-range jumper. He can kick it out to Daquan Cook or James Harden for a three-point shot. He doesn't have to put it all on his shoulders, and I think if he didn't face Ron Artest in 2010, he probably wouldn't have gotten that and become the player he is today.
So anticipating that he'll be much more efficient this time around, do you see him on the winning end of that matchup?
It's tough. I wouldn't count out Ron Artest, especially he's had a lengthy break because of the suspension. His legs have got to be fresh. He's the only Laker that didn't have to expend a ton of energy against the Denver Nuggets in that hard-fought 7-game series. So I think he thrives off of stuff too. Ron Artest is going to get booed, and he's going to come out there and want to prove a point. He's going to want to shut up the fans. So I think that's going to make him work even harder on Kevin Durant. So I wouldn't necessarily give the edge to Kevin Durant, even though he's improved. I think Ron Artest is still going to give him all that he can handle.
Right. So speaking of rest, I mean, the Lakers have barely had a chance to breathe after slugging out the 7-game series against the Denver Nuggets, and they always talk about just the challenge of matching up against Oklahoma City with just their youth and their speed. I guess there's two schools of thoughts with this because, the Thunder had a 9-day waiting period after sweeping Dallas in the first round. There's one that's saying the Lakers are too exhausted now to face Oklahoma City, and then there's another that's thinking that maybe the Thunder will look a little bit rusty. Which scenario do you think is most likely to happen?
I don't know, but we'll find out in the first 5 minutes, that's for sure. I think that it helps the fact that the Thunder is a young team. They have young legs, and they're ready to run. They have a ton of motivation. Again, the 2010 playoffs, the Metal World Peace elbow, not come out and not have a rhythm. So without the chance that they can have some success despite the layoff, but it's awfully tough to regain your rhythm and I guess maintain your rhythm and not having to after so many days off.
So regarding Russell Westbrook, I mean, I know that Kobe Bryant decided to guard him in the last matchup and had some success. Obviously, remains to be seen if he would at least do that right away, considering he's needed to score for the Lakers. But, when you compare and contrast how Westbrook has done against Derek Fisher when he was on the Lakers and now Ramon Sessions, obviously he's still been successful. How would you compare and contrast the two matchups that the Lakers had, when they had those 2 point guards?
Well, you mean when they had Fisher?
Yeah, when they had Fisher, now that they have Ramon Sessions.
Well, I think it's sort of the same thing. Back when they had Fisher, he couldn't guard him, and they had to put Kobe on him. And now that they have Sessions can't guard him, and they still have to put Kobe on him. So I think that's going to be an interesting matchup to watch in this series because I don't think there's any way Kobe can guard Russell Westbrook for an entire game and it still provide the offense that he needs to provide the Lakers at the other end. So, it's going to be a nice little chess match between Scott Brooks and Mike Brown because whoever gets the better end of that matchup, I think, is going to have an edge in this series in addition to Kendrick Perkins and Andrew Bynum and Ron Artest and Kevin Durant.
So last time we talked about Fisher, he was obviously struggling with his shots, but once again, the playoffs, he's elevated his game and his shooting percentage. Obviously, the Laker fans have seen this many times before, but what's been the difference, compared to his regular season output versus what he provided against Dallas in the first round?
Well, you guys know as well as anyone that Derek Fisher has an unbelievable ability to step up when the postseason begins, and that's what we are sort of seeing out of him right now. As soon as the playoffs started, it's like he had a bad shooting night. I mean, he only took, I think, 3 shots in Game 1 against Dallas. But after that game, in Game 2, it's like the light went on, and he really stepped up and became the playoff performer we all know him to be. The fact that I think he had more games to integrate himself into the second unit of the Thunder, and they had more of a chance to figure each other out. I think that's really what helped Derek Fisher. He understands now where his shots are going to come from, when his opportunities are going to come, and when he needs to be aggressive. So those things have really, I think, all played a big factor in him turning it around. He actually was doing much better in the last 10, 11, 12 games of the regular season and went into the playoffs with some momentum in terms of shooting the ball and shooting with incredible accuracy. So I think the best is yet to come, and soon we might see one of those big shots from Fish in this series.
Maybe with even .04 seconds left on the clock. Who knows?
Would that be something? How would Mitch Kupchak feel if he got rid of a guy and he comes back and burns the Lakers?
Especially if it's Game 7, right?
Exactly.
So lastly, Darnell, I saw in a recent live chat that you're picking the Thunder to win in 5 games. What gives you confidence not only that the Thunder will pull it off and beat the Lakers in the series, but that they're going to be able to make it short?
Well, I said after Game 2 when the Thunder beat the Lakers with that huge second half out in Staples Center that the Thunder, the Lakers can no longer run with the Thunder. I think that's just evident in the fact that the Thunder now has weapons to match up with their bigs in Pau Gasol and Andrew Bynum. They've got tough defensive matchups for Kobe Bryant and Thabo Sefolosha and James Harden. They've got Hardens offense where if you put Kobe on Westbrook and you put Artest on Kevin Durant, you still have to account for James Harden, and I just think they have too many weapons now. And if they are able to rebound, close out possessions, good rebounds, and get out in transition, I don't think there's any way that the Lakers can keep up with the Thunder in transition. So, and they have home court advantage. So all of these factors I think is just too much for the Lakers to overcome. And if it's not 5, then I think it'll definitely be 6.
Those are the thoughts of Darnell Mayberry with the Oklahoman. Darnell, thanks for the time as always. Always fun to talk basketball.
Always a pleasure, Mark.